Wine and Crime contains graphic and explicit content which may not be suitable for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, you are listening to Wine and Crime, the podcast where three friends chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash their worst Minnesotan accents.
You know it.
Yeah, although as we record this, we just got back from Tejas.
Oh my God, it took me so long to get out of my Texas accent.
Amanda did the Dallas show entirely in that accent.
When I got home on Monday night, I was telling Corey about our adventures, and I just couldn't help myself.
I couldn't help myself.
And he was like, you don't need to keep doing that voice. I was like,
I do.
Honestly cannot stop it.
Darling, I do, though. I don't think you understand.
Bless his heart.
Well, thank you,
bless
sugar.
His heart. Thank you, sugar.
Thank you, sugar.
Oh, it's so good. Anyway, yeah, that is where we are in life. And also, it is over 100 degrees.
Yep.
Nice.
I lost power yesterday because of heat.
Yep. The planet is uninhabitable.
Yep.
Spiraling towards darkness.
Out of control.
Take your meds, everyone.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Get therapy.
And in my case, we will get to some other catastrophic natural events. But before that, let's talk about the topic.
Who are you?
Oh, fuck it. I'm Kenyan.
I'm Lucy.
I'm Amanda. It's just like old times.
I just want to get to the good stuff.
Listen,
know?
It's been 10 years since we've done this. We have no clue what we're doing. It's been 2 weeks since we've recorded.
Yeah. We're just basically starting at the beginning again. We had an hour of tech issues.
Yep.
It's fine.
It's a very good place to start.
We're like rehabbing ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so our fan pick is brought to you by Ellie Brown. And Ellie says, quote, I wish to dedicate this episode to my University of Minnesota Duluth grad school cohort, Kat, Christy, Maggie, Claire, Amber, and Zach.
Oh,
which comprise 6 women and 1 man, the most women to have ever been taken into the program in 1 year at UMD.
Wow. Sick and also amazing.
I wish to especially dedicate this episode to my grad school buddy and BFF, Kat, who has stuck by my side through thick and thin. I love you, Kat.
Oh, I love you too.
I love you, Kat.
Hey, I love you, Kat.
I don't know why I can't.
Kitty cat.
Hey, love you, Kat.
It came out like that. It's fine.
Hey, especially when I shout out my friend Kat. I love you, Kat.
That's what I say to my cats every morning. I love you, Kat.
So Ellie has selected the topic of forensic geology.
Well, technically, Ellie selected geology crimes because, quote, they didn't believe that forensic geology was real geology, but I changed it.
What does that mean?
Well, we'll kind of get to it. There's a lot of soil.
It's as real as the Space Needle. We'll get to soil.
All right, so geology, Lucy added the forensic. I ignored that addition and didn't do forensic geology and just did geology. So you're welcome, Ellie and Kat.
Listen, we're covering the whole spectrum.
Dirt.
We
geology.
love you, Kat.
Let's get right to it. Amanda, what is our wine crime pairing for forensic, maybe geology?
Well, our sweet, gentle fan picker also wanted us to drink something that had some nice minerality to it.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, you don't say. And I have this fabulous Spanish sparkling white, the Spanish cava, that is going to be perfect because it's nice and dry. It's going to have a nice mineral balance to it. It's not too sweet. It's also like perfect for the kind of day that will turn off your power due to heat.
Yep.
She is 11.5% ABV, so she's pretty mild. This is like a nice summer sipper. It's not going to get you too crazy.
You can day drink with it.
Yeah, exactly. She's a white blend that is predominantly Chardonnay, but this is not oaked, so it's going to be real nice. And this has been gently pressed. And this says, remaining alone with the noblest fraction of the must to achieve the finesse expressed by this cover.
Wow, those are a lot of words.
In addition, the first fermentation and the second in the bottle. So it has a second fermentation in the bottle, which I love. It gets natural carbonation, which is, I am a big fan. Have been carried out at a low temperature of 61 degrees Fahrenheit.
That sounds nice. Can I have that?
I know,
want to
right?
have that temperature.
For a fruity and floral aromatic range so characteristic to this Valencian cava.
What is this accent?
I don't know. The terroir, or the geological area from which she hath grown is Topographical is a mix of sandy and clay soils with the presence of stones.
Ooh, we'll get to the clay.
It's quaffable. It's got some apple on the nose, budding flower, and then, it finishes out nice and dry with a little mineral balance. So, this is sparkling, so I'm going to pop it, and I just put on lotion, so this could be bad. Here we go. Okay. Oh, golly. Oh, nice pop.
Yeah.
That pop rocked.
Oh, I love you, Kat.
Oh, God, we're hitting rock bottom already.
We'll get to rock bottom.
I'm just going to keep saying, I love you, Kat, anytime a joke fails.
I love you, Kat.
That's the new cricket sound. I love you, Kat.
I'm sorry. It just came out weird. I wasn't thinking.
Never
really
apologize. It was perfect. I love it.
I'm going to open my high noon pineapple.
I'm going to enjoy this delicious, delicious tap water.
Yum. Have Zach bring you a Coke. That's a good treat.
I've already had a Dr. Pep today. I feel like I shouldn't overdo it.
Oh my God. You're making life.
Yeah. I had a Mexican Coke today for...
Yum.
Nice.
Yeah. I was going to say the first time in a while, but I was drinking a bunch in Tejas.
Yeah, I was going to say.
First time in like 22 hours.
That is a while.
Yeah, not even 24.
That's a while.
Too long, honestly.
Way too long.
Cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Lucy, what is our background and probably not psych for forensic geology?
Watch, it's just all psych.
Okay, these are goat teeth. Here we go.
Ooh.
I should say what it is I'm shaking from now on, because now I have a lot of shakers.
Nice little trill.
Yeah.
Goat teeth make for a nice little... Also, we got a message from somebody that said, Lucy wouldn't have to have jars of bones if she only had a maraca.
Well, get her a maraca full of bones.
Those are that's her version of a maraca.
You don't know what's inside a maraca.
Mm-hmm. Could be bones.
Could be anything.
Could be anything. There's no way to know.
There's no way to know. Okay. Geology is the field of study concerned with the solid earth. Included are sciences such as mineralogy, geodesy, and stratigraphy.
I'm going to need to know what geodesy is.
I'm going to tell you
I
in
never
just
read
a second.
it in high school. I refused.
I actually had to...
I hate geodesy.
I hated geodesy.
So boring.
Homer's geodesy.
Way too long.
Ugh.
All I know is there's like maybe killer mermaids in it. I don't know. A
So-
giant. A cyclops?
I don't know.
think
I
there's a
honestly don't
Cyclops.
remember. It
I
was
don't-
the only book from like AP Lit or whatever that I skimmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miss Sinclair, come on.
Come on.
you're so full of zest and insight and interesting knowledge. Why did you put us through the Odyssey?
I don't think
It's
she
not
had
her
a
fault.
choice.
Yeah, that's part of the
I
curriculum.
think it's just
I
the
know.
foundation of Western literature or whatever.
Boo.
Okay, blah, blah, blah.
Geodesy.
It's been a while. We can come up with something better. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so mineralogy is the scientific discipline that is concerned with all aspects of minerals, including their physical properties, chemical composition, internal crystal structure, and occurrence and distribution in nature, and their origins in terms of the physiochemical conditions of formation. So that's what mineralogy is.
Great.
I think that's what most people think of when they think of geology, like concerning rocks.
Right.
But it's not just rocks.
It's not just identifying rocks.
Exactly. So geodesy is the scientific discipline concerning the Earth's shape and its dimensions.
That's crazy.
So today, scientists primarily use satellites to study the planet, but previously they had to use land surveys and a geodesic coordinate system to study the geometry of a curved surface.
Ooh.
I was
Science.
listening to More or Less, which is a podcast about statistics.
Wow.
You fucking would.
Wow.
And somebody,
More or less.
isn't that funny? And
I like
somebody
that.
wrote in and asked because they write in and say like, I heard this statistic recently and that does not sound like it could possibly be true. And then the podcast like researches it and debunks it if necessary. And somebody saw a stat that like the pyramids have moved 4,000 kilometers since they were built.
What? No.
Actually,
absolutely
we
not.
will get to something similar. So maybe save this anecdote.
Okay. Well, long story short, it's not true. They've moved like 400 meters or something. Anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
We won't get to that specifically, but like, yes. So geodesy, very hard to study because as we've talked about before, like maps are always really fucked up because the Earth is curved.
Mhm.
So there are different, like there is kind of the accepted map of the world. But if
It's
you
super racist.
Yeah.
It's very racist. Also, if you look up different types of maps, there's just like a huge gamut. There's a huge variety in like the proportions of different continents and all that
would
stuff.
the
direct-
U.S. is like the biggest thing on
It makes
every
the
fucking
U.S.
map.
look way bigger than it is.
Yup.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it
it's
makes
just-
Africa look smaller than it is.
Mhm.
And it's just not right.
Nope.
Puts the North on top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you can't blame like map people, mapologists, because really the curved surface of the Earth is really complicated to measure.
Portray flatly.
Some of
Yes.
it you definitely can.
Well,
blame
yes,
on
choices
map
were
on
There
made.
is, I'm sure
Right.
there is definitely racism involved in
Mhm.
like earlier
always
map
is.
making, whatever. Yes, it's involved in anything. But
Mhm.
studying the geometry of a curved surface is quite complicated, especially if you do not have satellite capabilities.
I
Sure.
would just point
So-
everyone to that one episode of The West Wing that talks about maps.
Okay. I would just
If
remind
you
folks
know,
that,
you know.
and I do not know. The Earth
I
is
don't
flat.
know either.
That's all
Yep.
I know.
I took a whole semester in maps.
In flat Earthology.
It was human geography. It was actually a really cool course, but we had a whole thing about maps. Okay, lastly, stratigraphy is the scientific discipline concerned with the description of rock successions and their interpretation in terms of a general time scale. So it's like a study of rock layers and how they layer, like the layering, to determine like a chronological history of how Earth has moved over time.
That is pretty wild. And like, I get it, but also like,
I'm scared.
How did we ever figure that shit out?
Did
Like, it blows my mind.
Did
It's too
either
scary.
of you
I
did either
won't.
of you take a geology class in like college?
I did.
No.
I took one,
It's
but that was a million years ago.
I mean, it was so interesting and so fascinating, but our final, literally you just walk into a room and there's a table full of rocks and you have to identify every single rock.
I didn't get to do that.
And were you like, this is bullshit, this is just mineralogy, and there's no stratigraphy on this exam?
Well, there was that was just the mineralogy portion. There was a written portion also having to do with stratigraphy, topography, all that.
Okay.
But that portion, I think I got like a 30%. But it was curved.
But you love
So I got like a
the
C.
Earth.
But it was really, really difficult. It was really,
curved.
really difficult. It was graded on a curve.
Did you get my joke? Did you get
Yes,
my joke?
we got
yes.
it.
Did you
We're
get
there.
it? Did you get my joke?
I got it.
Okay.
So minerals being inorganic elements or compounds that have a fixed chemical composition and that are made up of regularly aligned rows of atoms are what all of Earth's rocks are made out of. There are some 3,000 known mineral species. Apparently they're species, I don't know, that we can identify based on chemical analysis. So just to refresh our memories, there are 3 different types of rocks on Earth. So first we have igneous rocks. These are formed from melted rock deep inside the Earth. So Amanda, for example, that obsidian tower, that obsidian point you got in Dallas, that is an igneous rock.
It comes from lava.
It's literally lava that cooled really, really quickly.
Cool.
I want one of those.
It's
I
really
want an
cool.
obsidian tower.
Well, we'll find one for you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's why it's so smooth. It's very sharp. It was used in a lot of
It's like
different
glass.
cultures.
It's like black glass.
It's essentially glass because
It's
that's
so cool.
that's what glass is also.
Mm-hmm.
But it was used for like weapons and all sorts of shit throughout. Like obsidians is one of those specific minerals that we can use in like an archaeological, anthropological sense to kind of see how people used it and how long ago they used it.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. So then we have sedimentary rocks, and these are formed from layers of sand, silt, dead plants, and animal skeletons.
Mm.
And then we have metamorphic rocks, which formed from other rocks that are changed by heat and pressure underground. So I do
Not lava.
not lava. So I do have a picture on the drive, which will be on the blog.
So, like, would
Of-
diamonds be metamorphic rocks?
I believe so, yes.
Because it's carbon that has been.
Because they're not
Under
sedimentary and they're not igneous. So yes, they're metamorphic.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So forensic geology is the study of evidence relating to minerals, oil, petroleum, and other materials found in the earth. And they are used to answer questions raised by the legal system. So as with any forensic discipline, it's in like a courtroom legal context.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
quote, the main use of forensic geology as it is applied today is regarding trace evidence. So by examining the soil and sediment particles to be able to, I don't know why it's spelled like that, to be able to link a suspect to a particular crime or a particular scene. Other uses in this field of science can include theft, fraud, locating a grave site, like if the soil has been disturbed within a certain period of time. That's the job of a forensic geologist.
My case is amazing.
I'm so excited.
I'm very excited.
Back to the diamonds, we were wrong, but it's too complicated and boring to explain why we were wrong, but we were slightly off. But the thought was there. It's the thought that counts.
We mostly nailed it, and I will take it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think a lot of diamonds nowadays aren't even mined. They're not even naturally made. So
They're not.
Right.
What classification is there for being made in a laboratory?
Well, this thing was just like diamonds technically aren't a rock. They're a gem. I don't really understand. I don't know. I said it was too boring. I'm sticking to
I'm
that.
so bored.
But both are a mineral, right?
I don't know. Yes.
Yes.
I just didn't want to get the
She
emails.
says with confidence.
Someone is
I
screaming.
don't
as
want the
per usual.
emails, but we
Doesn't
know
matter.
that
Don't
it's not
care.
right.
We're really
Don't
not
care.
talking about diamonds here.
Nope.
Okay, so as with any other forensic field, geology requires the aid of many other disciplines of science, such as medicine, biology, geography, engineering, the whole gamut. Like, you're probably not going to get any kind of degree in specifically forensic geology. You know what I mean?
Maybe
Like-
one as in a long list of other degrees. It wouldn't
Right,
be your
right.
solo degree.
That's what I'm saying. It incorporates all these other disciplines.
Yeah, I do actually think I agree with you. I think that most of the time when geological expertise is needed, rather than having designated forensic geologists, they just bring in outside experts and
Well-
like professors and shit like that to
You would-
study.
Yes, you would be a geologist or have a background in geology, and you would just apply that to
A crime.
A forensic case.
An
crime.
investigation. Yep.
that is exact. We're all on the same page. That's what what I'm saying.
Yep.
Got it.
So forensic geologists use instruments and methods common to the profession of geology, such as binocular microscopes,
Hot.
petrographic microscopes,
Hot.
X-ray diffraction,
Hot.
hot,
It's all hot.
scanning electron microscopes,
What?
Scanning. Hot.
Okay.
and microchemical analysis.
Oh my God.
That's where I draw the line.
Super hot.
Call me daddy. Call me micro daddy.
Ew. Igneous rocks are so hot.
I'm so horned up for igneous rocks.
They're literally
You're getting me
hot.
igneous rock hard right now.
Ish.
my
Okay.
God.
One of the first detectives to utilize forensic geology wasn't a real person at all. It was Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we'll get to it.
Perfect.
Ooh.
So the character claimed to be an expert on London's exposed geology to the degree that he could detect different types of clay on a suspect's shoes to tie him to the scene of a crime or to verify an alibi, etc.
So forward thinking.
Yeah.
That
very
fictional
forward-thinking.
character.
Like,
But actually, it did not
Predicted.
exist
Yeah.
before Arthur Conan Doyle. So,
it's
like,
prey.
he kind of invented it just like in his head, but obviously not in practice,
Right.
which was pretty cool. So here's a quote from the Geological Society of London, quote, "The earliest published application of forensic soil science and forensic geology was in April 1856, when a barrel that contained silver coins was found on arrival at its destination on a Prussian railroad to have been emptied and refilled with sand. So somebody stole all of the silver coins and just replaced them with sand in this barrel.
So that
like a
it
similar
would still be
weight.
like heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're
Oh.
like, where'd this sand come from?
Exactly. Where did the sand come from?
Love
So
that.
Professor Christian Gottfried Ehrenberg, a natural scientist at the University of Berlin, acquired samples of sand from stations along the railway lines and used a light microscope to compare the sand with the station from which the sand was most likely to have come from. So this is arguably the first documented case where a forensic comparison of soils was used to help police solve a crime.
That's so cool.
That is amazing.
1856. That's
I
so
love
cool.
it. That's like well before fingerprints.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes
Well-
and no. I have some of that in my case, too.
I mean, it is I feel like it's before.
before-
It's before fingerprints, but not like well before. I mean, like relatively.
I was reading about this to pad my case. It's like before we had a solid understanding that fingerprints were unique, but not before like the
they used them.
collection of or like documentation of fingerprints at a crime scene.
Okay.
But it's like before we had a true understanding of fingerprint like technology.
There was a lot of forensic technology and science that kind of came to light in the 19th century.
We'll get to it.
So, I mean, like even photography, like
Mm-hmm.
the 19th century was basically like the heyday for
Mm-hmm.
all
It's
of
really
these
wild.
different processes and, concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So, related, in 1891, Hans Gustav Adolf Gross,
Christian Andersen.
yes, known as the founding father of criminal profiling, introduced new concepts in the investigation of crime scenes, such as using microscopes to look at trace evidence, for example, rocks and soil.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of the first one to utilize microscopes and these different scientific methods to compare rocks and soils.
We'll see if he was the first.
One of them. Well, the first was Sherlock Holmes. Let's
Gonna
be
give him
real.
a run for his moolah.
Let's be real. Well, I intentionally skipped the person that you are covering.
Good
Amanda.
girl.
After all, forensic geology isn't just concerned with rocks, as we have stated, but also with any materials incorporated into the earth, such as water. So maybe we're looking at like a case about groundwater contamination, for example.
Ooh.
Aaron
Or swamp.
Aaron Brockovich.
Swamp water.
Yep.
Oh, I watched half of Aaron Brockovich on silent over somebody's shoulder because they were watching it in the
on
row
the
in front of me
airplane?
on the flight, and my row didn't have televisions, but they did in first class.
Mm-hmm.
God, she's so perfect. She's
So
so
perfect.
beautiful in
I
that
know.
movie.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
They might also look at fossils. We talked about obsidian being like glass, but like any sort of glass, because glass is a naturally occurring chemical, a chemistry has occurred.
Right.
Mhm.
And also soil. We've touched on this a couple times, which is more likely what a forensic investigator would be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the study of soils, that is called forensic pedology, or just pedology is the study of soils. But forensic geology sort of is this big umbrella term that encompasses all of this kind of shit, including pedology.
Cool.
So a lot of what forensic geologists deal with is being able to identify whether the soil has been disturbed or otherwise affected by human activity, such as murder.
Yes.
Murder.
There's been a fire. When we're looking
Loretta Cole.
when we're looking at soil samples, color is one of the most important things to note is in terms of like physical properties. And as we've learned from The Dress, people can interpret color in very different ways using just our eyes and our stupid fucking brains.
Breaking
Yeah.
your brains in that drunk dive is a highlight of my entire
That
existence.
was fucking wild.
I will
yeah,
never
honey, we're
see
in a
it.
simulation.
I will never see it as blue and black. Like, I understand that
You say
some
that
people
now.
do,
Yeah.
but
No, I thought the same way. I had only ever seen it one way, and then suddenly my brain just flip-flopped.
Suddenly see more.
It was crazy.
is seeing the blue dress.
I had never seen that, and I don't want
Little
to.
Shop of
because
Horrors.
you didn't come to my performance junior year because you were probably in France.
Yes.
I was on costume crew.
Yeah, you were.
So I never saw it either. I just heard the entire thing front to back
God,
like
it's so
35
good.
times.
It's so good. You'd love it. It's all Motown. You'd love it.
I know. I know I do.
Kenya. I'm talking to Kenya.
Oh.
I'm not
Oh.
talking to you. Yeah.
Okay, so colors, very subjective, like everybody sees color differently. So investigators use something that's called the Munsell soil chart or the Munsell color chart. And there's a couple of pictures on the drive, which will be on the blog. So this is a color space. It's not a graph, it's a space because it's 3-dimensional. This is a space that specifies colors based on 3 different properties. So we have hue, which is the basic color. So it's like, is it blue? Is it pink? Is it green? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Chroma, which is the color intensity, basically the same as saturation.
Yeah, like from inside to the outside of the wheel.
Mm-hmm. And then we have value, which is the lightness. So we either have like a really deep, rich, dark red or like a light pink, for example.
This is an amazing graphic, and I love it.
Yeah. it didn't really occur to me that color, like we see color charts and color wheels like in your, Word doc, whatever, like, you can pick a color off of like a graph. But the fact that there are 3 very distinct properties and also each of these 3 properties, any individual's perception of any one of these factors can vary so differently. It was just interesting to me to think about the fact that it's not represented on a chart or a graph. It has to be a 3-dimensional model.
It's cool.
So this was created by Professor Albert H. Munsell in the first decade of the 20th century. So he started working on it in like 1897-ish. And then he published it in, I believe, 1901. So it was like, it's well over 100 years old.
Well, good for him.
And this was adopted by the United States Department of Agriculture as the official color system for soil research in the 1930s.
Cool. Congrats.
Yeah, right? These factors are illustrated systematically in the 3-dimensional space, like I said, since all 3 factors can't exist on a 2-dimensional shape, such as a graph. So after we look at the color, we look at the mineral or the soil's density. Quote, to determine the weight of the sample in question, we just use a scale. So it's like 8 grams or whatever. To determine the volume of the sample, if it's a rock being measured, you can just simply place it in water and then measure the displacement of the water. But if it's a soil sample, the same technique is used, but the soil sample is placed in a cling film, like saran wrap, to avoid disintegration. The main use of like measuring the density of the sample is just to obtain the best description of the sample in question. So every single sample that somebody brings into a lab, you have to get all of this data on it before it's even tested, just to have the data.
Right.
So we would also look at the hardness of a certain mineral. And this is really, I knew you. I just rely on you to make jokes about the hardness.
How could she not make, yeah, exactly.
And we'll get to the cleave. We'll get to the cleavage.
Oh my. The cleavage.
So this is really just in the case of rocks and not soil. So different minerals have varying degrees of softness or hardness. And we use I left a window there for you. And we use a 10-point scale to determine what that degree is. So for example,
on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard are you?
Right.
Literally, yes.
Tal hot blonde.
Tal hat blonde.
Talc is the softest.
Ooh.
Talcott blonde is the softest.
Oh my God. Some geologist out there right now is screaming, racing to see if they can get that Twitter handle. Talcott blonde. You're welcome.
Okay, so talc is the softest with a scale number 1. Gypsum is number 2, and gypsum's used in like plaster, not necessarily
papier-mâché.
Not necessarily drywall, but like different, like kind of chalky boards kind of stuff.
Okay.
Maybe even chalk. Gypsum might be just like chalk. I don't know.
No idea.
So gypsum number 2. Calcite has a number of 3. Then we have fluorite, apatite,
Apatite.
Apatite is that really pretty blue bracelet that I got at that store in Dallas that is called Luna Metaphysical.
Ooh.
Tell Iris that we sent you because it is the most beautiful store. But I got a bracelet
and Iris is the most beautiful human.
Oh, she's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous, gorgeous stones. They're all ethically sourced. If you are in the Dallas area, go check out Luna Metaphysical. Oh, my God.
I'm going to go on the website right now.
But apatite, it's not turquoise. It's a bit darker than turquoise in color, but that one of the bracelets I got was apatite. Then we have orthoclase. I'm not familiar with that.
Orthotricycline, low hormone, birth control.
Birth control.
Yes,
Don't
exactly.
trust it.
I don't trust it.
I was on orthotricycline for a
I
long
was
time.
too. Who wasn't? It's
I
the
know.
thing they put everyone on first. I think.
Every teenager. Yeah.
College. Quartz, which is in a whole bunch of different like crystals.
Mm-hmm.
Topaz is number 8, corundum number 9, and then finally diamonds number 10. This is the hardest.
Diamonds
one.
are the hardest.
This is from my boyfriend, Encyclopedia Britannica. Quote, other physical properties of minerals that aid in identification are crystal form, cleavage type. So cleavage is like the angles at which it naturally forms. So for example, pyrite, like fool's gold, it forms at like 90-degree angles. So if you see a chunk of pyrite, if you look closely, it's like 90-degree angles. This is how the crystals are formed. So that's your cleavage.
Cool.
Your fracture, which I think is really related to cleavage. That's like how it breaks apart. Streak, luster, color, specific gravity, and density. So these are all different ways that we identify particular minerals.
Got it.
In addition, the refractive index of a mineral can be determined with precisely calibrated immersion oils.
What?
I didn't look into this.
You dip it in an oil and then the oil turns color?
You're trying
basically.
You're trying to determine density?
No, it's the refractive index.
Oh.
So it's
how
like
much
how
light gets through.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like kind of how shiny it is.
Cool.
But it has to be specific oils that you dip it in to like retain the control. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Some minerals have distinctive properties that help to identify them. For example, carbonate minerals effervesce with dilute acids. Halite is soluble in water and also has a salty taste. So one other part of that weird geology final exam that I had to take.
Did it taste shit?
You can. You
Lick
can lick
the
it.
rock.
You can lick it and see if it has a salty or like an irony taste to it.
Love.
Ew, did they clean it after you licked it?
No, and that's how we ended up with COVID-19.
Yeah.
No, but my professor encouraged us to order like this box of sample rocks. So we could do whatever we wanted to these sample rocks,
Yeah, it's
including
your own
lick
box.
them.
Your own backs
But
are
then
racks.
that would just help you learn like visually looking at this rock. If by chance you licked it, like,
I would
I
lick
know
the
that's
rock.
a salty one. I'm
I
sure we
know
weren't
you would.
licking the classroom rocks.
I mean Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Ish.
You would lick the rock
I would fully lick
with
the
consent.
rock. Well,
Okay.
of course. If invited
Fluorite.
to do so, I would lick the rock.
Okay. Fluorite and about 100 other minerals fluoresce in ultraviolet light.
Cool.
So if you put it under like a black light or whatever. And uranium-bearing minerals are radioactive.
Is that what is that what luminol is made out of? Like, is it like, I know it's a liquid, but is it like made of rocks that fluoresce?
What is it made of?
Is that
I'm
as
Googling
dumb
it.
of a question as my bathtubs and teeth?
I don't think so. It's up
so
there, but I don't think so.
The answer is no. The central chemical, so it's a chemical thing. Luminol is a powdery compound made up of nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon.
Well, powdery.
Those aren't rocks.
Nope, they are not.
If it's a powder, whatever.
Sure. Not all powders are made of rocks, though. Like flour, for example, is a powder.
I like where your head is at, and I
Totally.
didn't know the answer either. So
Okay.
that's fine.
Well,
that's
I
fine.
tried.
You
know
tried.
what?
You did great.
Ask stupid questions. It's
Exactly.
Yeah. It's important to note a sample's particle size frequency distribution. So this consists of the material's weight, the weight percentage, the number of particles present, or the volume of the sample. So like, say you have a blob of dirt and you can determine that roughly 20% of that dirt is made up of small pieces of sandstone, then that would go a long way in distinguishing this same sample from, say, the dried dirt on the carpet of a crime scene.
Right.
And also scientists can test the pH of a sample and compare it with others. So there's a lot of different ways to distinguish different sample sizes, different minerals, soils, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to test it and to analyze its properties and then thereby compare it to different other samples. So I just thought that was all really interesting. And I want to leave you with one, albeit fringe, theory about the Great Sphinx of Giza.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this first part is from Wikipedia. In the 1950s, French mystic and alternative Egyptologist Schwaller de Lubix
invented the Lubix Cube.
quite the mouthful. Yeah. Schwaller,
hardly know her.
I
don't
never
spit,
swallow
schwaller.
anymore. I never swallow anymore.
No.
What is the point of schwaller?
All about spitting.
What is the
If we
point
even
of
get to that.
swallowing?
Right?
Yeah, I'm not going to work that hard. Are you kidding?
Anyway, so Schwaller speculated that the body of the Sphinx was eroded by deluges, and therefore the Sphinx must predate them, further claiming that ancient Egyptian knowledge originated from colonists or refugees of Plato's sunken continent of Atlantis. So in 1979, author and alternative Egyptologist John Anthony West, inspired by Schwaller's ideas, attributed the erosion of the Sphinx to the Nile floods between 15,000 and 10,000 BCE. By denying the existence of any evidence for the development of Egyptian civilization prior to the first dynasty, West created room to inject the idea of a lost, advanced civilization of Atlanteans who created the Sphinx and passed on their knowledge to the dynastic Egyptians. 10 years later, West sought the opinion of geologist Robert Schoch to validate his claims. In 1990, they traveled together to Egypt to visit the Sphinx. The following year, Schoch formulated and presented his version of the hypothesis, purposely avoiding the use of the word Atlantis because he thought that that's what turned people off, because the notion of Atlantis was so fantastical that he just felt like that just discredited the rest of the claims.
It does make it sound a little loony.
So they are just going on pure science, evidence, geology, whatever. We're not talking about Atlantis or Plato anymore.
Okay.
So he originally estimated the Sphinx to have been created before 5000 BC, later pushing his minimum estimate further back to 9700 BC.
Wow.
Once again, aligning it theoretically with Plato's lost civilization of Atlantis. So chronologically, timeline-wise, it's the same time, but he's not mentioning Atlantis in his published official theory.
Sure.
So here's another way to put it, and this is from The Unredacted. Quote, the Great Sphinx at Giza looked like it had been eroded by water rather than wind and sand. Although he was not a geologist, West could clearly see what Schwaller meant by his initial theory in the 70s. The distinctive erosion patterns looked very different to the other Old Dynasty monuments in the Giza complex. How could the Sphinx, a monument surrounded by desert, even buried under sand for much of its life, which was 4/5 of its known existence, it was under sand. So how could it have been eroded by water? West was sure the Sphinx must be much older than previously thought, so old it had stood when Egypt's climate was far wetter than it is today, more than 7,000 years ago. According to Schoch, the deep vertical erosion patterns on the Sphinx and its enclosure could only have been caused by water. To be precise, centuries of torrential rains pouring down on the monument.
A deluge, as you said.
Exactly. Such rainfall had not occurred at Giza since at least 5000 BCE, if not earlier. The implications of this were lost on nobody. 5000 BC was not only 2.5 millennia before Khafre, that this is the pharaoh that supposedly the Sphinx was modeled after.
Okay.
So not only was it alleged to be built 2.5 millennia before he lived, it was long before any advanced civilization was known to exist anywhere in the world.
Interesting.
Schock didn't just study the external weathering on the body of the monument. Alongside geophysicist Dr. Thomas Dobecki, they carried out seismic studies around the statue only to find the same distinctive rainfall-induced weathering patterns on the subsurface bedrock.
So this is also using forensic meteorology to figure this out.
Yes,
True.
weather patterns. Yep. So like I said, all these forensic disciplines incorporate other disciplines.
Yeah, it's super cool. And it makes sense that geology and meteorology would be so closely tied
Absolutely.
to each other.
Circumstantial evidence also emerged that appeared to confirm the team's findings. Facing blocks thought to date from the Old Kingdom had been added to repair the Sphinx. Underneath, the same undulating weather patterns were visible, indicating the repairs had been made when the Sphinx was already very ancient. So basically what this is saying, the Sphinx that we see, like the lion and the head, is much, much newer than the bedrock of limestone that it's built on top of.
At its core. Underneath its core,
it's
under
base.
its butt.
Its base, yeah. So that's like way fucking older than the Sphinx itself.
Interesting.
So
All right.
this would demonstrate that, quote, human beings were capable of monolithic masonry and sophisticated sculpture so far into the midst of prehistory that they were as far removed from the ancient Egyptians than that great civilization is from us today.
Whoa.
That is fucking crazy to think about.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just got scared
Isn't
for
that
no
cool?
reason. Existential dread.
So
Wow.
again, this is
Everything
kind of,
we do is so meaningless.
it's so
Yep.
meaningless.
Just
So
have fun.
Yep.
as I said, this is kind of it's sort of known as like a fringe theory, but I think much like space and God and world history and all that stuff, to presume that we today know exactly how things work is extremely conceited.
Yeah.
Right.
I
We don't
love
know shit.
I love the fact that there are things to be discovered that just like blow our current perceptions the fuck apart.
In the grand
I think that's
scheme
really
of things,
cool.
we discovered germ theory like half of an eye blink ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we don't
So-
know fucking shit.
Yeah. So obviously not all geologists, let alone Egyptologists, accept this. But I think it's really cool. It's really interesting. It factored into the forensic geology thing. And I just wanted to share it because I went down a little bit of a
fascinating.
wormhole and I got really freaked out and I loved it.
Yeah,
Very
now you have to
cool.
share your fear. I get it.
Yes. So
What
anyway,
are friends for?
that is my seg.
Well done.
I hope it set us
Yeah.
up. I hope it set us up for a good app.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Well, it was excellent.
Thanks.
All right. So my case was brought to my attention by the fan picker. So thank you
Ooh.
very much. I'd never heard of it before. I'd heard of the disaster, but not the case.
Okay.
Okay.
I
So-
love a good disaster.
Oh, yeah.
I hate it. And now I'm going to have a new fear. Can't wait.
My case is chock full of them.
Oh. okay.
I liked that.
I love you, cat.
I love you, cat.
I love you, cat.
My robot identity just broke out there for a second.
I am human man. Okay, go.
Okay. So we're just going to get right into it, okay?
Great. Who died?
Compared to other European countries, Italy experiences a much higher rate of lethal earthquakes than any other.
Wow. Well, great.
So the main reason for this is that southern Italy lies very close to the line where the Eurasian and the African tectonic plates meet. And this line is also the location of Italy's major volcanoes such as Etna, Stromboli, and Vesuvius.
Love.
Okay.
Which
Got
should
it.
bring back some memories for Lucy because we used to play Pompeii in her yard like all the
I
time.
forgot we used to play Pompeii.
Yeah. We used to
Wow.
just like scrape at rocks and pretend that we were archaeologists discovering ruins in Pompeii, and then alternatively pretend that we were villagers in Pompeii, and then like the crisis.
The day of the explosion.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
just be
my
like
God.
making bread and be like,
Yeah.
did you hear that noise?
Oh, and then like run through the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to burn off energy
such
somehow.
active imagination.
Oh,
We would
honey,
play
this
that
is not
a
even
lot.
the weirdest. This is not even the weirdest.
Anyway,
Yeah, I want to go out and play Pompeii.
we used to literally, that is what we did as
We
children.
used to play witch trials.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tracks.
Okay.
But then, like, mixed in, we'd play, like, New York Loft,
Yep.
where we just lived in a loft. in New York
Fantasized about
City.
being in our 20s living in a New York loft.
Oh, wow.
Can you
which
imagine
was
if that had
a
happened? We would
fantasy.
have murdered each other.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Not as
there are-
appealing.
There are photos on the drive of maps that show these tectonic plate lines in
You love a
ways
screenshot of a map.
that I could kind of understand.
Got it.
So take a look.
Got it.
Additionally, Italy is the location of numerous smaller fault lines, especially along the Apennine mountain range.
Okay.
Don't know.
Nailed it.
In the past 2,000 years, more than 400 destructive earthquakes have occurred in Italy, and the country has experienced more than a dozen major earthquakes in the past 100 years, which is a
Wow.
lot.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a
a lot.
Like a dozen major ones in 1 century is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The worst Italian earthquake in recent history occurred in 1908 near the city of Messina in southern Italy and killed an estimated 70,000 people.
Holy
Whoa.
shit. That's a lot of fucking people falling
So-
into a crater.
Fuck. I don't
Yes.
think that's probably
I don't
how
think
they
that
did
was
know,
the cause
I
of most
know.
of the deaths.
I know.
There
Maybe
is
some.
These are my
maybe.
jokes.
Maybe they fell
my
right in the crack. I
Yep.
don't know. There is one photo of the Messina devastation.
Mm.
It looks bad. Also,
Real
this was
bad.
before they knew how to like do any kind of earthquake preventative.
Yeah. Or like early
Building.
alert or warning or.
Well, we will get to the issues with early alert systems.
Oh, God.
Cool.
So, one of Italy's most recent devastating earthquakes occurred near the medieval walled city of L'Aquila in the Abruzzo region, and this city lies on one of the aforesaid mountains I can't pronounce. Fault lines and had already been partially destroyed 3 different times by earthquakes over the past century. So, like, we know that this city is in a real bad spot.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps happening.
It's like San Fran.
Right. But
Yeah.
Worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. The city that we will be talking about in this case is L'Aquila. So
La Quinta.
this earthquake, it was the 6.3 magnitude earthquake struck at 3:32 a.m. on April 6th, 2009. It destroyed tens of thousands of buildings, injured more than 1,000 people, and killed 309 people.
Christ.
And then more than 70,000 people were left homeless by the destruction. So obviously, like, way more people survived than in past decades and centuries, but still a bunch of buildings went down.
Mhm.
And there
Still
are
bad.
lots of photos on the drive of the ruins and the rubble in L'Aquila. And all I can say is that even rubble in Italy is prettier,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's
Like-
gorgeous.
right? Like, not to make light of this devastation, but like,
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Well, with like the blue, like the I don't
it's
even
just
know the blue arches. Oh beautiful.
Just beautiful buildings. I mean, beautiful ancient architecture.
I mean, I suppose it speaks to the beauty of the city it destroyed, but whatever.
So the Italian government's response to this earthquake drew widespread condemnation after Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, which we do not have time to get into this man, but wow,
Is he bad?
he's a doozy. He's kind of like an Italian Trump a little bit in just that it's like, how is this man such a joke and still in charge?
Yeah, in power.
Yeah.
That remains to be seen.
Right.
Ugh.
Anyway, there's a photo of him also on the drive. He's an absolute mess of a human. So Berlusconi downplayed the plight of those left homeless by the earthquake who were currently living in tent cities, stating, quote, "They have everything they need. They have medical care, hot food,
Paper
Of course.
towels.
Oh my God.
Of course, their current lodgings are a bit temporary, but they should see it like a weekend of camping."
Wow. A lifetime of camping.
Son of a bitch.
70,000 people suddenly left homeless, and that is what he says to the press.
You should be grateful.
When asked to clarify this statement, he addressed himself directly to the homeless victims, saying, quote, "Head to the beach. It's Easter. Take a break. We're paying for it. You'll be well looked after."
Head to the beach and wait for the tsunami.
Jesus Christ.
This is foul.
Yeah.
These people lost everything.
Yes.
And many people died.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Imagine.
No.
Imagine.
How this is a let them eat cake scenario.
Absolutely.
This is so out of touch. It's alarming.
And Berlusconi's abysmal response was not the end of the controversy surrounding this natural disaster. Following an inquiry into the country's handling of the disaster, 6 scientists and 1, actually maybe 2, depends on the reports, government officials were arrested. The scientists, Franco Barberi, Enzo Boschi, Giulio Salvaggi, Gian Michel Calvi, oh my God, Claudio Eva, and Mauro Dolce.
Wow.
We're
Gabbana.
We're all members of the Italian National Commission for the Forecast and Prevention of Major Risks. So their job, they work at this government agency and they're seismologists.
They're supposed to predict and help prevent this shit.
Well, there's nothing you can do to prevent it.
Well, right,
obviously.
but like prevent the widespread death.
Yeah.
Right, but this
Not
study
prevent
it,
an earthquake.
study it, keep track of it, statistics, predict, whatever, right? So the government official, Bernardo de Bernardinis, held a senior position in Italy's Civil Protection Authority. He was deputy head of that authority, so they oversaw not just natural disasters, but, you know, lots of different things to try to protect the civilian population. Collectively, this group of people were accused of providing the public with, quote, inexact, incomplete, and contradictory information about the risk of a major quake occurring after smaller tremors had been detected in the preceding months.
Well, shit. It's like, we know the big one's coming, but we're not going to tell ya.
Well, that is debatable, but that is what they've been accused of.
Also, people on the West Coast know that the big one is coming. What the fuck are they going to do about it?
Right.
It might be tomorrow. It might be 100 years from now.
Right. So, pretty unbelievably, considering like what Lucy just said, it's like your job is to predict, but like you can't.
Yeah, there's not really fuck all you can do about it.
Right.
Other than give people the knowledge to prepare as
Right.
best they
You
can.
can predict that it's coming. That's
Right.
pretty much the best you can
certainly
do.
can't predict the date.
No.
Nope.
Yeah. So, given all this, it's pretty remarkable that all 7 were charged with manslaughter,
Nice.
Wow.
and the case went to trial in 2011. So prosecutors argued that the earlier tremors should have indicated to the experts that there was a high likelihood of a major earthquake hitting the region, but that instead the group had downplayed the risk to the public. They brought in scientific experts who testified that the types of low-level tremors seen before the L'Aquila quake, which is really hard to say, L'Aquila quake.
L'Aquila quake.
L'Aquila quake.
L'Aquake.
L'Aquila quake cloaca.
Cloaca.
Were, quote, typical of the kind of preliminary seismic activity seen before major earthquakes. So, like, you get small tremors before you get the big one.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Prosecutors further argued that by describing these tremors as a, quote, normal geological phenomenon, the scientists had misled the public about the risk they faced.
Misled.
But, like, and misled them. But at the same time, it's like, tremors are a normal geological phenomenon.
They're under the ground. There it is.
From the movie Tremors.
From the movie Tremors. Reba McEntire is in that film.
Okay. Got it.
Reba.
You gonna finish that corn dog, cowboy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, apparently I need to see this. Okay.
No, that is whatever.
Anyway, I just think it's so fucking bogus. Like, it is normal activity to have small tremors.
Right.
Whatever. They're scientists. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's not their job. Whatever. It's fine.
And
Blame them all.
And there are areas where you can predict that shit, such as along a fault line. Whereas if we had one in Minneapolis, that would be
Right.
serious.
Bizarre.
This is a
issue.
city that has
We have had earthquakes in Minnesota, though.
Well, yes, but I mean,
But they're not.
you know what I'm
common.
saying? It's not.
I know
It's
what you're
not
saying.
like San Francisco or this place.
Yeah, this city has had major earthquakes before.
Mm-hmm.
They knew they're going to get more of them.
Right.
So the defense countered that major earthquakes could not be predicted with any level of accuracy, and that even if they could, nothing could be done to prevent them.
Mm-hmm.
Defense lawyers also pointed out that this region of Italy is almost continuously experiencing low-level tremors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just always there,
You're always shaking.
almost none of which lead to a major lethal earthquake until they do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the defense lawyers argued that, quote, if an event cannot be foreseen and more to the point cannot be avoided, it is hard to understand how there can be any suggestion of a failure to predict the risk.
That's fair, I feel.
So it kind of got down to like semantics. They were talking about like, well, they couldn't have predicted the earthquake, meaning like they couldn't have predicted when it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the court is saying like, well, your job is to predict the risk of it happening and then clearly communicate that risk level to the public,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense, and I agree with that. But also, risk is within like a scale, you know.
Yeah, risk is a scale, and also like people probably wouldn't have like majorly changed their behavior, or
Right.
they would have for like, you know, a news cycle, and then they would have
Exactly.
stopped. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Thus far, I don't feel like these people should have been prosecuted.
Right.
Personally,
It's just so different from a hurricane where
Mhm.
like you have roughly a date
Right.
where it's like, this is bearing down, this will probably arrive in the next 72 hours.
Right,
Like,
get out.
leave your home.
yeah,
versus an earthquake.
evacuate.
Yeah,
That's
there wouldn't.
totally different.
Mhm.
Right. So, however, the judge ultimately sided with the prosecution.
Hmm.
And following a year-long trial, all 6 of the scientists, as well as the government official, were convicted of criminal manslaughter and causing criminal injury.
Wow. That's
They were-
wild.
Each
70,000 cases? Or no, wait, that's a different one.
308 people died.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So 308 cases of manslaughter.
Wow.
Life in prison. I mean, it's Italy, so I
Damn.
don't know, but
Yeah.
like that's
Well,
a lot. That's a lot.
They were each sentenced to 6 years in prison for, quote, failing to give adequate warning of an earthquake.
Hmm.
This was an even harsher sentence than the prosecutors had even sought. They had sought 4 years. So the judge
Wow.
really laid it on.
Yeah, that shouldn't. Okay. I feel like that's too much power. And I know that judges can do that, but it's like, how come you get to just decide that they get more?
Way more.
I don't know.
Well, I think if still falls within the terms of like all these cases of manslaughter,
sure,
they could have been put away forever.
It's 50% more than what they were asking for. That's a lot.
I know, but the prosecution will come up with a number that they think like the jury will bear. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
They can win.
So the verdict immediately drew condemnation from numerous international scientific organizations.
It's a bit harsh.
Yeah. The American Geophysical Union released a statement saying that the verdict had the potential to deter scientists from working with governments or even working in seismic risk assessment period for fear of litigation. Because
I can see that.
Absolutely.
I'd be like, fuck this. No thanks.
yeah, I'll just study rocks. I don't need to be put in prison for not predicting an earthquake.
An earthquake, yeah.
The head of Oxford University's Department of Earth Scientists concurred, stating that, quote, the issue here is about miscommunication of science, like not the science itself. Like scientifically, they were not wrong. It was just a communication error to the public, which is like not even fully their job.
Wouldn't that be the government's job? To be like the middleman?
But isn't it so wild and shocking that a government would like
Minimize risk.
minimize their role
Or,
in
like,
this
pass the
communication
buck?
breakdown and pass the buck to these other people? Yeah, wow. I've never heard of that happening before.
Jesus Christ.
So to finish this quote, we should not be putting responsible scientists who gave measured, scientifically accurate information in prison. This sets a very dangerous precedent, and I fear it will discourage other scientists from offering their advice on natural hazards and trying to help society in this way.
Yeah.
Imagine if we put all of the scientists from Jurassic Park in prison. Imagine.
I mean,
I just took a sip of water. I almost spit all
Imagine
over my
if Jeff
computer.
Goldblum had to serve out a sentence just for being there to try to study it.
Absolutely
he
not.
wasn't a scientist, though, in the movie, was he?
I think so.
Was
He
he
always
just like a tag along?
he always plays
No,
a scientist.
he's a scientist in the movie.
He only plays a scientist. Hold on. Let's.
Nature
I'm
finds a
Googling
way.
What did Jeff Goldblum do in Jurassic Park?
Nature,
Finds a way.
Ian Malcolm.
Doctor. He's a doctor.
Doctor.
Mathematician.
Ian Malcolm.
Chaos theory. We'll take
There
it.
it is. That's science.
We'll take it.
Okay.
Okay.
It counts.
Nature
Don't
finds a way.
That's not what he sounds like. How dare you?
That's right. Usually it's over piano. Okay.
Are you thinking of the other
have
guy?
to rewatch The Fly.
Okay. So seeming to fulfill these predictions, Luciano Maini, the head of Italy's Natural Disaster Bureau, resigned in protest over the prison sentences given to his colleagues. And like a bunch of other people also at that bureau resigned in protest.
You're not putting us away, too.
Yeah, they're like, listen, we do our best, but we're not going to be the scapegoat for natural disasters.
Right. For a lack of communication from the government.
Right. It's one thing if you are a building contractor or an architect and you like claim that a structure is whatever proof and then it collapses because you didn't do your due diligence. Like that's a very different thing.
Yeah, that's
I thought-
engineering. That's
I
not.
thought this case was going in the direction of like actual negligence. It's super not.
No.
Yeah.
So the verdict also created widespread frustration amongst seismologists as it falsely suggested that it was possible for scientists to foresee major earthquakes. According to the American Geophysical Union statement, quote, the criminal charges against these scientists and officials are unfounded. Despite decades of scientific research in Italy and in the rest of the world, it is not yet possible to accurately and consistently predict the timing, location, and magnitude of earthquakes before they occur. It is thus incorrect to assume that the L'Aquila earthquake should have been predicted.
Yeah.
The scientific journal Nature used even harder language, describing the verdict as, quote, perverse and the prison sentences as ludicrous.
Nice.
Nice.
So you're in trouble when the scientific
Nature
journal
comes at
Nature is calling you perverse.
Perverse.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not a glowing review.
It's not great.
It's not
That review does not
great.
luminous.
No.
So-
Paper and oil.
In interviews
We don't
following
know what kind of oil, but some sort of controlled
Something.
oil.
Not
Some
luminol,
kind of
something
oil.
else apparently. And diamonds
Luminol
are
is not made from rocks.
metamorphosis. I don't know. Okay. In interviews following the sentence, both prosecutors and families of the victims stated that the case had nothing to do with the ability of the scientists to predict earthquakes, but rather the failure of government-appointed scientists to communicate a potential risk to the public.
Well,
So
there
again,
you go.
It's back to what we were talking about. It's like, it's a very semantic thing of like,
Right. Where does the responsibility fall between the research and the dissemination of the information gathered from the research?
Right.
Research.
right. And the talking about the risk level. So ultimately, the ruling was appealed, and a panel of 3 appellate judges overturned the convictions of all 6 scientists in 2014. But that's still 3 years after the trial
So
started.
they were in prison for 3 years.
Probably.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I don't know if any of them were out on bail during some of that time. I don't know how.
Or if that's even a thing in Italy.
Italy has the wildest court system. I have no idea. Like, look at Amanda Knox. Like, I have
Right.
no fucking idea. Stating that they had been, quote, victims of uncertain and fallacious reasoning. However, the judges upheld the conviction of the government official, Bernardo de Bernardinis, finding that the government had, in fact, downplayed the risk to the public,
Oh, weird.
causing people to stay indoors that night. But, like, what night? Causing people to stay indoors that night and a higher death toll, but determining that this failure of communication was the exclusive fault of the government officials and not the scientists.
Exactly what night? I
know.
don't understand the prosecution's reasoning.
I don't understand that either. Again, it's not like it's a hurricane where there's a specific like date or even like small-ish date range to worry about. Like, people are not gonna sleep outside in case there's an earthquake at some point in the next decade.
I wonder if what happened, here's my speculation. Seismic activity was ramping up. We know this. And the recommendation was stay inside for safety. And then the big one hit, and it was like, oh, fuck. I told them all to stay inside. And then all the buildings collapsed on them.
But like,
Oops.
staying inside is not the advice if there are small tremors.
Well, right. Then that's why the responsibility would be on the person who recommended that.
And conversely, if the order was to stay outside, can you imagine the chaos?
Or how long people would put up with it. They wouldn't
Right.
put up with it for
Yeah.
very long.
No.
I mean,
a couple hours.
if you had it to
personally.
do over, if seismic activity is ramping up, recommend that if people are able to evacuate, that they do so. Like, that would be the best.
But you
Course of
cannot give
action.
them a timeline.
Right. You can't.
The only safe thing to do would be like, everybody leave this city. This city is no longer a city.
Right. You shouldn't live here anymore.
Right.
Period. Full stop.
But like even in it, but in this context, there really isn't that even. The most you could do is be like, hey, seismic activity has been a little bit bonks lately. Be prepared to leave your house.
Right.
Right.
If
And
shit goes down.
Right.
And if you're able to leave
That is
earlier.
That's realistically the best they could do.
Right.
Right.
And nobody did that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the judges stated that Bernardinis was guilty of, quote, negligence and imprudence because of a series of reassuring comments he made in a television interview before the quake occurred, although they did reduce his sentence by 2 years. So,
2 years or by 2 years?
two years. So, there must have been enough seismic activity that he was being interviewed on the news, and he was too calm and reassuring in that interview.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's not really on them.
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
You know?
And who's to say you're too reassuring? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
what the fuck?
This guy could be a total piece of shit, and it's like you still don't want to cause widespread panic.
Right.
It's a tough line. It's a very tough line to toe.
It's
you have to
completely
be
subjective.
right. And I mean, there is a responsibility when you're in the public eye like that, and you are a leader of a community to be like forthcoming to a degree, but also to not set off so many alarms that then you can cause serious problems with panic and pandemonium,
Right.
and then other people can die.
And like the
It's
max
just
that
fucking-
people would have done would be, and I read this in an article as well, is like the max that people could have done would have been like stock up on food and
Right.
water, but if your house collapses, like that's not going to be any good to you.
Yeah, bye, I guess.
And then so it really only helps people whose homes weren't collapsed.
Mhm.
And then
It's just an impossible situation.
it's if you're there is nothing you can fucking do about it.
Mhm.
And then the only other thing was like somebody said like, well, people could have moved their cars out of garages.
oh, okay.
So then their cars wouldn't have been crushed.
That would have saved lives.
It's like
Jesus.
maybe that would have saved some people at the margins. Maybe not. It might have saved some property damage of cars.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just
It's impossible to know.
yeah. So
Impossible to know, but I do think that punishing these scientists was absolutely not.
Absurd.
that
not
is
the
absolutely
right thing to
absurd.
do.
And obviously, like, government officials do have a responsibility to responsibly communicate
Right.
science and risk to the public. But with earthquakes specifically, that is so fucking impossible to do. Like, we should put fucking what's her nut scarf COVID lady in prison for not accurately.
What was her name? I know exactly who you're
Burks,
talking
Dr.
about.
Burks.
Yeah.
Because she fucking let Trump
Scarf.
say all kinds of crazy shit.
Scarf COVID lady.
And frankly, so did what's his name?
Fauci.
Fauci.
He just tested positive for COVID like today
well,
as we record.
that's a
Poor
bummer.
Fauci.
But like, you know, there are other cases where scientists have really failed to communicate public health risk.
And this was not one
Right.
of those.
I certainly give
circumstances.
Fauci a little bit more leeway given
Well, he
the
eventually
circumstances.
spoke out more than Dr. Burks did, but like,
Right.
Also, everyone's gonna get COVID. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Everyone will.
I haven't gotten it yet.
I haven't
that you
either.
know of. Anyway,
Exactly.
that's not what I mean. I just
I
mean that
would
like
know.
scientists that let politicians who want to
Right.
minimize things run all over them do have a responsibility to say something and do something, but it doesn't really apply in this case.
Mhm.
No.
Mhm.
And
So-
like you mentioned earlier, if anything, this case, this verdict dissuades other scientists from coming
Right.
forward and wanting to be a
Right.
part of
Right.
Then
this
you're gonna have
conversation
less
about
of a
public
sense
safety.
of risk.
Mhm.
You know, it
Ridiculous.
has a chilling effect on anyone wanting to communicate risk because what
Right.
if they're wrong?
Right.
So in 2016, the head of the Civil Protection Authority at the time of the earthquake, Guido Bertolaso, was also acquitted of any wrongdoing after 7 years of legal wrangling in Italy's Byzantine court system. So this was actually the other guy's boss, the guy who, the deputy head, De Bernardini,
Mhm.
he was not acquitted, but his boss was eventually acquitted. So it's really this
Great.
Bernardini's guy who gave that specific interview who was on the hook for all of it, basically.
Got it.
In the years since this case, the city of L'Aquila has continuously struggled to rebuild. Thousands of people were unable to return to their homes, and many buildings are still in ruins. The recovery has been plagued by ongoing problems, including slow-moving bureaucracy and accusations of corruption stemming from the construction sector's ties to the mafia.
You don't say.
And then 2020.
And also,
Got a lot
like,
more
how do you
issues.
get a loan to rebuild in a place that lies on this fault line?
Well, and that lies on a fault line and where everyone on your street is also scrambling for those same resources. It's
And
just
it's
like a perfect storm of bullshit.
It's also an like really, really fucking old city. Like, how are you really gonna rebuild?
I'm sure there are zoning laws where, like, you can't build, like, very, very new structures alongside all these beautiful ancient ones to
like
protect the integrity of the
Historical preservation
Right.
is hard to navigate
city already.
when you're building around it. Yep.
And Italy's bureaucracy for anything is among the worst, like as is France. So it's a nightmare.
I feel
One
very sorry for those people who live there.
One resident stated in an interview around the 10-year anniversary of the quake that, quote, before the earthquake, L'Aquila was a small town with everything you wanted. Since the earthquake, it has nothing. It is difficult to restart life without a center or a bar where you can go with your friends.
Oh, God. That would be devastating.
Small businesses like grocery stores, bars, and restaurants disappeared.
Oh,
I just love that the
God.
Italians
What will
like,
we do without our bar?
we don't have a bar to go to with friends, so life is not worth living.
Yep, we got
here.
it. We're done.
I mean,
We're
if
done.
that's like your social
I get it.
center,
Yeah,
I think that is.
1,000%.
I think this person knows how to
totally
live.
fair.
Yep.
An
Completely
American
legit.
would be like,
Fair.
there are no toll roads and my office building fell. Like, where can I work?
Toll roads are fucking stupid.
Anyway, so that is the case. Thank you to
My
the
Wow.
fan
personal
picker.
city center is also a bar. I feel.
Oh,
this.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good stuff.
Dang.
Real interesting. Real interesting.
Nice work.
So
Well,
watch
should
out
we
if you're
hear-
an Italian seismologist.
Yeah. Garrett, watch your back.
If you're
should we
a size,
hear-
if you're a size queen.
Size queen. Are you ready for my case?
Maybe.
It's okay. You're going to like it. It's short, but I found this super fascinating, so I had to cover it.
The Sphinx.
The Sphinx. To dive into this case, we need to hop into the way, way back machine to 1904, only 11 years prior to the birth of our patron Saint Helen. She's my version of geography.
I was just going to say that.
So at this time in forensic history, we were working with very little. This is from universalclass.com, and yes, I am padding my case. Just roll with it. Quote, by the early 1900s, the field of forensic investigation achieved major developments due to the design and use of modern forensic methods and discoveries such as benzodine, a chemical compound used to develop a universal presumptive test for blood.
Ooh,
So
human
that's
blood
kinda-
or any
yeah,
blood?
I think any kind of blood, but just blood. Perhaps the most famous of forensic developments, at least on a psychological level, was the statement made by Edmund Locard, who stated that, quote, every contact leaves a trace.
Yes.
Oh.
The phrase published in Locard's paper, you're going to love this.
L'enquête.
L'enquête criminelle et les méthodes scientifiques.
Nice.
In 1904, which is also popularly known as Locard's exchange principle, remains the backbone of forensic science collection and recovery to this day. By the beginning of the 19th century, the study of hairs, fingerprints, and blood thrust the development of forensic investigation to new heights. And Locard, the forensic professor at the University of Lyon, France, created the first crime laboratory for use by police and other law enforcement personnel.
From.
So this was also the year 1904 of a murder.
Ooh.
That is widely regarded in the forensic science community as the first documented case, like murder case, I guess, solved using forensic geology and mineralogy. But this wasn't a case of rocks or like dirt found on a shoe, although dirt on something also comes into play.
Dirt on a dick. Dirt on a penis.
We'll get to it. Enter
Dirt on a dick.
Dirt on a dick. Enter Georg Popp, he's German, so there's no E on the end. So
Dirty dick.
I will henceforth be calling him Georg.
Georg.
Nope, it's
like in
Georg.
Sound of Music.
Yeah, Georg.
I'm going after Georg. Enter Georg Popp. Born July 31st, 1861 in Frankfurt, Germany. Georg had a love of science, especially in the field of geology from a young age. He became a chemist and professor and was one of the founders of microscopic and scientific criminalistics and modern forensic science at the Johann Wolfgang Goethe University in Frankfurt.
Mm-hmm.
Guten Tag. Gluten-free.
Gluten-free.
He is also the creator of Popp's principle, which reads as thus, quote, "The differences in the floors from place to place provide valuable clues to prove the link between a suspect and a crime scene. Soil is a complex mixture with a multitude of mineralogical, chemical, biological, and physical properties. Since minerals are an important part of the soil, a mineralogical examination of the soil is essential to forensic identification. Traces of material are mineralogical, biological, or chemical residues of an object, for example, in the form of abrasions and rubs. For an investigation, it is important
rub
to
up on some.
rubs for rub up on something. That's from a gack, isn't it? Something
I
I don't know. It was just something to rub on.
It was your dolphins
Yeah, my
fucking a
dolphin.
snake.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're
I
right.
don't know. It's probably something to rub up
Probably
on.
just something to rub on. Oh my God. I can't get, I'll never, I can't get over that.
They'll never recover.
I will never financially recover from this. So, for an investigation, it is important to choose the appropriate combination of methods that take into account the context of the soil samples. It covers a broad spectrum on the analysis of soil components and the closely related materials such as plant fragments, pollen and spores, and diatoms.
Ooh,
Diatoms. The soil formation process includes base minerals, temperature, water condition, vegetation, time of day, and the chemical processes of dissolution, oxidation, reduction, and even human activities.
Wow.
I
cool.
swear to God, if they had sold science to us in school just through a forensic lens, I would have
loved it.
I
Yep.
would have loved it so much
I
more.
would have become a biologist.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So the history of the development of a soil and the results of such complex soil formation processes are strongly reflected in soil color. The systematic observation of the earth in terms of colors is particularly useful for the investigation.
Hence
End
the
quote.
3D model.
Mhm.
Color is what you look at first.
Yup.
I love
So, when the body of a young seamstress named Eva Diesch was discovered in a bean field in Frankfurt in October of 1904,
I love beans.
I know, right?
Ich heiße
this was all going to come into play, and they needed their boy Georg to help out.
Mm-hmm.
So Eva had been strangled to death with her own neck scarf.
Oh no.
And while evidence was certainly left at the scene, most notably a filthy handkerchief that family confirmed did not belong to Eva, authorities weren't sure what to do with it. The handkerchief was covered in mucus, likely belonging to the killer, but DNA testing was almost a century away.
Yeah.
So authorities called in their guy Georg to check it out. What he found was an absolute treasure trove of useful forensic evidence.
Wow.
So this is from gizmodo.com.
Your fave.
Quote, one of my faves. Popp examined the handkerchief and found that the mucus in it was full of snuff, like smokeless tobacco, coal dust, and hornblende.
The fuck? What's
Hornblende is a component of many types of rock, including granite. A look at the nearby residence turned up one man, Karl Laubach, who worked at both a gasworks where coal was burned and a gravel pit where hornblende was among the minerals.
Let me guess. Did he use snuff?
Yep.
So
He had coughed and like wiped his mouth on this handkerchief.
And all his dirty
and all the shit that
work
he'd been inhaling,
detritus.
came out in the mucus.
Oh my! It was in the mucus.
Yup.
Oh,
Isn't that
my-
fucking nasty?
Oh
so
my
it wasn't
God.
on the handkerchief.
Like
it
you
was
could
in
see
the
it.
mucus.
You could
Yeah.
see it, but it was in the mucus. It was like granules in his mucus
Right.
soaked into the handkerchief.
gross.
Isn't
Oh my
that
God.
fucking narsed?
I had such bad boogers when we were in Dallas.
Oh,
dry.
honey.
It's dry.
I
It's
should
like
have
baby.
put that under a microscope.
Honestly, what we really need to put under a microscope is like what you blow into a handkerchief after a day at the Renaissance Festival.
Yes.
Oh my
And
God.
that's what this reminded me of.
He got
Absolutely.
gray boogers.
So
Oh,
much
yeah.
dirt.
So much dirt.
Oh.
That's basically what this fucking handkerchief was covered in. This
That's
nasty
also
shit.
like
I
what
like that our
boogers
only
are.
reference for
Is the
being
Ren
outside
Fest.
is after a day at
At the
Ren
Renaissance
Fest.
Fair. I know.
Or in Dallas.
It's
Amanda, you had bad boogers
Oh, I
in
know.
Dallas too.
I know, but they weren't like dark and dirty like they are after
No,
the Ren
I
Fest.
get the
No.
worst boogers on airplanes.
But you get,
Oh, yeah.
you get bad boogers in certain environments.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were around a lot of vegetation that we're not used to. It was really hot.
It was dusty.
It's true.
It was
It was dusty. It's hot. We have probably allergens that we're not used to inhaling. You're going to get boogered. So when they hauled Carl in to be questioned, detectives checked under his nails and got all the components on the
All
handkerchief.
the boogers because he
Yep.
was picking his nose.
Well, no, except, thank goodness, the mucus, end quote. So they got like they got snuff, they got the horn blend, they got coal, they got all this shit out from under gold. They got all this shit out from under his fingernails, and it's all a match to what was in the mucusy handkerchief.
Wow.
What they didn't get was a confession. Laubach insisted he'd been nowhere near the scene of the crime, but Popp still had more tricks up his sleeve to put Laubach at the scene. Because without DNA to match the handkerchief to him, who's to say it's his? It could have been somebody else's who works. Like, that's the industry of this area. So it could
Right.
have been
Other people could be around both of those
Correct.
things.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
environmental.
Right.
Plus the snuff.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So investigators confiscated articles of his clothing that they determined he'd been wearing like the day of this murder for further testing. Unfortunately for him, he didn't hem his trousers. Popp took a look at the bottom edges of his pant legs and found multiple layers of dirt.
If you commit a murder, you gotta
Do it nude.
get
Or in a dry suit.
Yeah.
you gotta get rid of whatever clothes and shoes you're wearing.
Yeah, they gotta go. They gotta
Get
go.
You can't
way
keep 'em.
rid of them.
But I also think he was like in maybe one of his work uniforms, and so he like
It's
couldn't
1904 and he's
Yeah.
a laborer at these two things. I doubt he has that many pairs of clothes.
True. Yeah. I don't know. For whatever reason, he didn't ditch
But
them.
maybe that's why he didn't want to burn or ditch them.
Right. I think it's because he probably needed them for work, but whatever. But maybe don't commit a murder
Right.
in the first place.
Yeah.
So at first, the dirt didn't look anything like the stuff found in the bean field where Ava's body had been laid. It had a layer of finely crushed mica that was not present in the field. Only under that mica layer could Popp find all the minerals he'd found in a sample of dirt from the field. So what was the outer layer of dirt? Popp scouted around, taking samples, and found that the road between the field where Ava was found and Laubach's house had that particular type of crushed mica on it.
They just from the dirt
Yep.
and
so
the
not
mucus,
only
they literally created a map of the
Yup.
crime scene.
Yeah.
literally, not only did geology help Popp prove that Laubach killed Ava, it revealed the exact route that Laubach took as he walked home afterward.
That
Oh
is
my
crazy. And it's
God.
1904.
Yeah. Isn't that
Yeah.
so fucking cool?
That
I
is very cool.
Love this.
It's so fucking cool. So this was absolutely mind-blowing forensic science. It is still referenced today from Raymond C. Murray and John C. F. Tidrow's case study written in 1992. Quote, when confronted with the soil evidence, Karl Laubach admitted the crime, and the Frankfurt newspapers of the day carried headlines such as, "The microscope as a detective." It is impossible to determine from the distance of almost a century how forensic geologists or a jury today would evaluate the geologic evidence amassed by Popp. But one fact is evident. mineral study had been used in an actual case fulfilling the prophecy of Arthur Conan Doyle,
Yes.
who had hypothesized the use of geology in criminalistics when he penned the Sherlock Holmes mysteries between 1887 and 1893.
And he like invented this just in his mind. But
Yep.
Arthur Conan Doyle was a physicist, so he
Yes.
wasn't a stupid person.
No, he was a scientist.
He knew
knew
that
shit.
this was possible. It just hadn't happened yet. Which
Yep.
I
He also
fucking love.
He also based some of the character on a person that he knew.
He knew. Yep.
Right. Who
Yes,
was also very, very
but
smart.
this wasn't documented
Right.
in reality until
Right.
Pop
For decades.
and the other person that I talked about.
Yep. For like almost 2 decades, it
Yeah.
wasn't used. It's so crazy how
cool.
and how like spot on the prediction was. Like this is pretty much exactly what Pop did. Was
Imagine
what was
being
written.
that criminal. Just
Oh.
being like, you
Oh
studied
my God.
what?
What? My mucus? You found my snuff?
Like, imagine just being that guy and being like,
I
fucking
totally got
for
away
real?
with this. Let's
Yeah.
go. Wait, what? Dirt?
Well,
Dirt did me in.
Kind of like Golden State Killer once the genealogy shit came around.
Yeah.
I bet if he knew about it as a cop, I bet part of him was like, oh fuck.
Oh yeah.
well, he wasn't a cop, but yes.
He
any
had been a
longer.
cop for like
He
8
had
seconds,
been
but
a
yeah.
cop.
Right.
So he was plugged into that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm sure
I
he
bet-
was
I bet as-
aware.
I bet as he started watching all these cases be solved by that sort
Yeah.
of DNA evidence.
I'm sure he was sweating. Yeah, I'm sure he was sweating.
I love it.
The second 23andMe hit the scene, I imagine a lot of criminals started sweating. So I'll leave us with this quote that really illustrates the impact of this forensic procedure. Quote, the use of geologic information in forensic settings was established internationally in 1908, so 4 years after, when Georg Popp was again called upon to assist in the solution of another murder. In this case, he focused his examination on the shoes of the principal suspect. He examined the layers of dirt encrusted between the sole and the front of the heel. The shoes were known to have been cleaned by the suspect's wife on the night before the murder occurred. So it was Popp's hypothesis that the soil had been sequentially accumulated on the day of the murder, with the layer closest to the shoe leather deposited first, and so on and so
Oh my
forth.
God, which is just like the layers of the earth.
Yup.
yeah.
By carefully
Stratigraphy.
removing...
That's some stratigraphy right there.
By carefully removing each individual layer of soil and examining it microscopically, Popp was able to retrace the steps literally taken by the suspect on the day of the murder.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he was able to match the soil from the shoes to the soil surrounding the suspect's home, to the scene of the crime, and to the location where the shoes had been hidden by the suspect. His solution of this case firmly established Georg Popp as the forefront of forensic geology. His microscopic examination of minerals and soil samples set a precedent for the continuing use of soil samples as an integral part of forensic investigation.
Yes.
Is that not some of the craziest, coolest shit you've ever heard?
That
Yes,
is
Pop,
very
yes.
cool.
I know. I was like, this is really short, but I fucking love this story so much. It's just really fascinating.
We could do a lot of episodes about forensic geology.
I know.
All the forensic stuff needs another go around. It's all good.
Yes, please and
meticulous-
thank you.
The meticulous examination of layers of dirt to like create a map is fucking rad.
I love it.
It's so fucking cool. I don't know. I was really jazzed. I wrote them in the bathtub.
Nice.
And I was really excited.
You were really jazzed /
I was.
electrocuted.
And electrocuted. Anyway, that's my
I
case.
was really bathed.
Well done. And thank you to our fan picker, Ellie Brown, and all your smarty pants scientist friends at the U of M Duluth.
I
And
love
Cat.
you, Cat.
I love you, Kat. And we love all of you. And tune in next week.
We choose to go to the
To the
moon.
moon.
Okay, nobody will understand that. Okay.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.